The wind howled across the dusty surface of the silent moon. Its sky was pale gray, the stars above faint but steady. Somewhere on this rocky ground, a lone human soldier walked slowly, his boots crunching over broken stones and loose dust. His name was Rick. Rick's body hurt from the emergency landing. His own escape pod had crashed 2 days ago during a surprise battle in orbit. He had food for only 1 more day, water for 2. His suit's signal beacon was broken. No help was coming. As he wandered farther from the wreckage of his pod, his eyes caught something strange, a deep trail in the dust, like a large ship had scraped the surface before crashing. He followed the trail cautiously. It led him behind a ridge where a strange, curved object lay half buried in the dust. It was a ship, but not human. Its surface was smooth and silver blue. It hummed gently, though sparks flickered from its side. The design was elegant, organic, like it had been grown rather than built. Rick knew at once. Alien tech. He walked closer, hand on his tool belt, cautious but curious. A faint energy field shimmered around the ship, but it was weak. He found a narrow opening on the side. The hatch looked jammed. Using his pry tool, he forced it open just enough to slip inside. The air was warmer inside the ship. Lights blinked weakly along the curved walls. The ship was wounded. And then Rick saw her. At the center of the ship's small control room stood a tall figure, dressed in pale silver robes. Her skin had a soft lavender glow. Her hair floated slightly, as if moved by unseen waves. Her eyes were closed, and her face was calm but alert. She held a long staff, and next to her floated a small spherical machine, like a robotic assistant. She turned toward him the moment he entered. "Don't move," she said, in a soft but commanding voice. Rick froze. The robot whirred, its lens flashing red. "I'm not here to harm you," Rick said slowly. "I saw your crash." The figure paused. The robot scanned him, then beeped softly and dimmed its light. "You are human," she said. "From the broken ship beyond the ridge." "Yes," Rick nodded. "Your ship's damaged. I can help fix it." She tilted her head slightly, as if listening. Then she took a small step forward. "I am Thina," she said. "Of the Velari people." Rick had heard of the Velari, a peaceful alien race known for their advanced energy tech and deep senses. But there was something odd. Her eyes remained closed. "Are you injured?" he asked. "I cannot see," Thina replied quietly. "I was born without sight. I use energy fields to sense the world." That explained her sharp awareness. Her body glowed faintly with energy. "My name is Rick," he said. "Soldier, mechanic. If you let me look at your systems, maybe I can repair your ship." Thina didn't speak at first. Her floating robot called. Toril beeped in a language Rick didn't understand. Then she slowly nodded. Double quotes, "Very well, human, but do not touch me. Physical contact is sacred among my kind." "I understand," Rick replied, respectful. He walked carefully to the console. Its design was completely alien, but some parts seemed familiar: power nodes, circuit pathways, control relays. The ship had suffered a hard crash. One engine was offline. Energy flow was unstable. Communication systems were completely dead. "This isn't going to be easy," Rick murmured. "I have time," Thina said softly. Rick began working. He used tools from his belt and a few items from a broken storage unit nearby. As he opened one of the main panels, sparks flew out. He jerked his hand back. Toril made a worried beep. Thina turned her head slightly. "You are hurt?" she asked. "No. Just a shock," Rick said with a dry smile. "I'll be more careful." As he worked, Thina stood quietly, sensing the energy fields around him. She was curious. His movements were focused and steady. Unlike others she had met before, this human was calm, not afraid, not loud. His presence was clear. Hours passed. Rick managed to stabilize the power core. and reroute some energy to basic systems. Lights inside the ship became brighter. Life support improved. But the ship still couldn't fly. I need more time, Rick said. You've already done more than expected, Thena replied. Why help a stranger? Rick didn't answer at first. Then he said, because if it were me in your place, I'd hope someone would do the same. Thena didn't speak, but she felt something shift in the air trust. Slowly growing dot just as Rick was checking the outer hull. An alarm light flickered red. What is that? Rick asked. Thena's face became tense. A signal from the outer. Sensors, something is approaching. Rick looked at the console. The screen showed faint readings movement across the surface. Are they Valari? He asked. No, she said. Too heavy. Too many legs. They live on this moon. Hunters. Rick's heart pounded. Then we need to finish this quickly. I'll try to repair the defense grid next. Thena gave a single nod. I will guide you. That night, Rick worked in the engine bay while Thena stood by the panel, sensing energy flows and warning him of sudden surges. They formed a rhythm, words, gestures, and unspoken trust. Before sleeping, Rick set up a small protective barrier outside the ship. You may rest, Thena said. I can stand watch. You can't see, Rick reminded her. I don't need eyes to sense danger, she replied calmly. Rick smiled. For the first time in days, he felt a strange comfort dot as he lay near the ship wall. He heard Thena whisper softly, Thank you, Rick. He closed his eyes and replied, You're welcome, Princess. Outside, the wind howled again. But inside, in the quiet light of the wounded ship, two strangers from different worlds began to understand each other. Ending hook, just before he fell asleep, Rick noticed a strange shadow on the edge of the scanner. Something fast and large was heading toward them. The sun on the moon was rising slowly, casting a faint blue light over the rocky surface. Inside the crashed alien ship, Rick stood with his hands on the edge of a panel, his brow covered in sweat. He hadn't slept much, but he had no time to rest. The warning on the scanner from last night still echoed in his mind. Something big was out there. Across the room, Princess Thena stood calmly. Her eyes were still closed, as always, but her face was alert. She could sense the shifts in energy outside, movements in the wind, small vibrations under the ship. Her mind painted images through those energy pulses. Something is getting closer, she said softly. Rick looked up from the console. I saw it on the screen too. I don't know what it is yet. But I've got to get this shield generator working before it reaches us. Thena turned slightly toward him. You repaired most of the ship with tools that weren't even made for it. How? Rick gave a tired smile. Mechanics is about patterns. Circuits, energy, pressure, those things are the same in every language. Even alien tech has logic. Toril, the small floating assistant, hovered near them. It beeped once in agreement. Thena moved closer, careful not to step near any loose wires. You're unlike others I've met. Most humans don't come near Valari ships. They fear what they don't understand. Well, Rick replied, fear never fixed anything. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then a loud thud came from outside. Dust shook loose from the walls. Thena's face tensed. That's not a windstorm. Rick didn't reply. He checked the scanner again. A large shape was just outside. Their sensor range moving slowly but directly toward them. It's hunting, Thena said. Rick stared at the scanner, then turned back to the open panel. Then we better finish before it finds us. Rick worked fast. He used broken pieces from his own escape pod, mixed with alien wires from Thena's ship. He didn't know if it would hold, but it was better than nothing. Sparks flew again as he reconnected a shield relay. Thena guided him. Though she couldn't see, she could sense the flow of energy, and told him when it shifted too fast or pulsed too strong. You feel it like music, don't you? Rick asked as he adjusted a glowing tube. She nodded slowly. Energy sings. It tells me what's broken and what is still alive." He looked at her with quiet respect. "I've never met anyone like you. And I've never met a human who listens to silence," she replied softly. They continued working, side by side. Step by step, the ship's systems came back to life. The shield generator flickered. The lights grew brighter. Even the communication panel gave a hopeful beep, though it was still weak. Then came another thud, closer this time. A low growl echoed from outside. Rick dropped his tool. "That thing is almost here." Toril floated near Thina, blinking rapidly. "It wants you to get to the safe room," Rick said, understanding the warning. "I won't leave until this is." "Done," Thina answered firmly. Rick hesitated. Then he nodded. "Fine, one last step." He moved to the back of the engine bay, where the shield core was glowing faintly. He touched two connectors together, and a surge of energy burst through. The ship, a soft humming sound spread through the walls. Thina lifted her head. "The shield ... it's working." Rick smiled, relief washing over his face. Not perfect, but enough to hold off something big for a while. But just then, the scanner beeped sharply. The creature had arrived. Outside, a tall, six-legged beast crawled over the rocks. Its body was thick and armored like stone. Eyes like red glass scanned the ship. It let out a deep roar that echoed through the moon's valley. Inside, Rick and Thina stood still. "Don't move," Rick whispered. The shield pulsed, forming a faint blue dome over the ship. The creature stepped closer, sniffing the air. It slammed one clawed leg against the shield. The barrier held. "Let's hope it doesn't have friends," Rick muttered for several long minutes. The creature walked in circles around the ship, testing the shield again and again. Then, at last, it let out a low snort and slowly wandered away. Rick let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "You saved us," Thina said, her voice calm but warm. "We saved each other," Rick replied. Later that evening, after checking the systems one last time, Rick sat down near the console. His arms ached and his mind was heavy. But he felt lighter somehow, like he had done something that mattered. Thina walked toward him slowly. Her steps were careful, graceful. She stopped just a few feet away. "Among the Velari," she said softly, "trust is not spoken, it is shown." Rick looked up. "How do you show it?" She reached out her hand slightly, uncertain. Then she lowered it again. "Never mind," she said. "It is not time." Rick didn't press her. He only smiled gently and replied, "I'll learn it. However long that takes." Thina tilted her head. "You already have, Rick." The robot assistant, Toril, floated quietly nearby. The ship was still damaged, but no longer dying. And in the middle of that moon, a small connection had begun, built not with words, but with work, courage, and respect. Outside, the sun had set behind the dusty ridges of the moon, and darkness covered the land like a blanket. The only light came from the soft blue glow of the ship's shield. Humming gently with energy. Inside, Rick sat near the control panel, eyes fixed on the screen. The signal from earlier still blinked in the corner. It was encrypted Velari code. Rick didn't know what it said, but Thina had told him enough. "It's from one of our ships," she had said. "But I don't know if it's friendly ... or not." Now she sat on a small bench across the room, her hands folded in her lap. Her head was tilted slightly, her closed eyes calm. But Rick could tell she was alert. Her senses were sharper at night. "Still nothing?" she asked. No reply. "Just that signal on repeat," Rick replied. Toril hovered beside her, scanning the ship's systems in silent loops. Everything inside the ship was holding together, but barely. The shield could last a few more days, maybe less. The engines were still offline. "They couldn't leave yet. We need to fix your main drive," Rick said. "That's our only way off this moon." "I know," Thina answered. "But tonight, we rest. You need it." Rick nodded. He was tired. His body ached from repairs, and the stress of the last 2 days hadn't let him sleep well. But something inside him kept alert, as if danger was near. "I'll sleep light," he muttered. He moved toward the corner of the ship and laid out a small roll mat from his survival bag. As he lowered himself to the floor, Thena spoke again. "You've done much for someone you just met." Rick looked at her through the dim light. "You're not just someone. You're trying to survive. That's all the reason I need." Thena was quiet for a moment. Then she gave a small nod. "Rest well, Rick." Hours passed. The ship's systems beeped softly from time to time. Outside, the wind had gone still. A strange silence wrapped around the ship. Suddenly, a faint sound echoed across the hull. Tap. Tap. Rick opened his eyes. He sat up slowly, hand moving to the small tool blade he kept beside him. He listened. Tap. Scrape. It came from the outside wall near the rear of the ship. Toril beeped and hovered closer to Thena, flashing a red signal. She turned her head slightly. "Something's near us." Rick stood up quickly and moved to the scanner. The screen showed movement, 3 shapes circling the ship, not as large as the beast from before, but faster, agile. "They're smaller. Probably scavengers," Rick sighed. Thena stood too. "They may be night feeders, drawn by energy or warmth." The tapping grew louder. Then, a high-pitched screech rang out, sharp and wild. Rick looked out the narrow side window. Shadows moved, thin, tall creatures with long limbs and glowing eyes. They skittered across the rocks like insects, fast and sharp. "They're testing the shield," Rick whispered. Another screech. One of the creatures leapt and slammed against the shield. The blue barrier sparked but held. Toril moved in front of Thena protectively. "We can't let them break it," Rick said. "If the shield fails, they'll come in." He ran to the side panel and checked the power levels. The shield was already dropping 93%. 91%. "They're draining it fast," he muttered. The Na walked closer, using her staff to feel the floor. "I can try to push the energy from the main battery into the shield." "Can you do that?" "Yes, but only for a short time. It will weaken other systems. We don't have a choice." She reached out her hand toward the wall, just above the glowing core. A gentle hum passed through the room. Rick could feel the shift power flowing, changing. Outside, the creatures howled again. One of them slammed against the shield, but this time it bounced off harder and shrieked in pain. Thena's voice was calm. "It's working, but I cannot hold it for long." Rick nodded and turned to the emergency systems. "Then I'll build a distraction." In 5 minutes, Rick had set up a crude energy flare from a broken power cell and a reflector dish. He opened the back chute just enough and launched the device far into the rocks behind the ship. It landed with a crack and exploded in a bright red light, humming loudly. The effect was quick. The creatures outside froze, then turned toward the sound. Within seconds, they darted away from the ship, drawn to the new energy source. The scanner showed the area clear. The Na dropped her hand. Her face was pale, energy drained. Rick rushed to her side and helped her sit down. "You okay?" She nodded, breathing slowly. "Just tired. My connection to energy must rest." Rick placed a small thermal blanket around her shoulders. She gave a slight smile. "You moved quickly. That distraction was smart." "Sometimes noise is better than fighting," he replied. Toril beeped softly, scanning Thena and confirming she would recover soon. As the night returned to silence, Rick sat beside her, not too close, but near enough to talk. "Those creatures, they weren't sent, right? Not by your people?" "No, they are wild moon beasts. My people would not use such things." "But someone sent that signal." Thena's face turned serious. "Yes, and whoever sent it might already be close." Few hours later, the scanner beeped again. This time, it wasn't movement, but a new message. Rick read the translation. "Princess Thena, Your signal has been received. We are coming. Remain at your location. Thena's face tightened. That voice belongs to General Vian. Friend? Rick asked. She shook her head slowly. Once, long ago. Now I'm not sure. Rick stared at the screen. His gut told him something was wrong. He didn't trust this general, not without seeing him first. We'll be ready, he said. Ending hook. Thena stood slowly, walked toward Rick, and gently reached out. For the first time, she placed her hand lightly on his arm. Thank you, she whispered. Not just for saving me, but for standing beside me. Outside, a ship approached quietly, hidden among the stars. Morning light returned to the rocky moon, painting the surface in soft blue-gray tones. The strange creatures from the night had vanished, and quiet filled the air once again. Inside the alien ship, Rick sat at the main console, eyes focused. Hands still. Princess Thena stood nearby, listening to the hum of the ship's energy, her long staff held gently in one hand. Her closed eyes made no difference. She could feel the changes around her, through vibrations and energy pulses. Toril, the small round assistant, floated silently above them. The message from General Vian was still on the screen. Rick had played it 3 times, and each time something about it felt off. He says he's coming to help, Rick said, his voice calm but doubtful. Yes, Thena replied. But his voice feels heavier than before. He was once my father's advisor, trusted. But when the war began, he changed. Changed how? He began making choices that were too sharp, too cold. He believed the weak should be left behind. She paused. Including me. Rick looked up. Because of your blindness? Thena gave a quiet nod. He once said a ruler must see clearly. I do not think he meant it only with eyes. Rick leaned forward and tapped the console. Then we better figure out what he really wants. He opened the encrypted part of the message and began to dig deeper. The Lari coding was different, but Rick had learned to read patterns. Behind the words was a trail of data fragments of ship IDs, location beacons, and something more. A second signal, Rick murmured, hidden behind the first. Thena tilted her head. Can you open it? Trying now. He used a broken part of Toril's toolkit to reroute the decryption path. After several tense minutes, a second message blinked on the screen. No voice, just text. Target located. Ship still active. Retrieval team en route. Prepare for capture. Rick's heart tightened. He's not coming to help you, Thena. He's coming to take you. And maybe take your ship, too. Thena's face remained calm, but her fingers gripped her staff tightly. He sees me as a symbol of power. The last royal blood of my line. If he controls me, others will follow him. But you don't want to go with him. I want peace, not control. Rick stood and paced slowly. Then we have a choice. Either wait for him and risk everything, or get your ship running and leave before he gets here. She turned her head toward him. Can the ship fly? Not yet. But I think I know what's holding it back. Rick moved to the engine room while Thena followed slowly behind, using the soft hum of the ship to guide her. Toril lit the way. Inside the engine chamber, blue lights pulsed weakly. The main thrusters were still offline, and several power tubes flickered on and off. The problem isn't just damage, Rick said, pointing to a half-glowing panel. Someone changed the control flow, rewired it, on purpose. Thena frowned. You mean sabotage? Yes, this wasn't done during the crash. It was done before. Thena stepped forward, reaching out with one hand. She touched the panel gently and let her senses feel the energy pathways. I remember now, she said slowly. Before I escaped, I felt a wrong current in the ship. My guards rushed me inside. I didn't have time to check. Someone made sure you wouldn't get far, Rick said. Probably one of Vian's agents. He opened the main engine board and began removing parts. Wires sparked. He worked fast, using his own tools to connect broken links. Thina stood beside him, sensing the energy shifts and warning him when the pulse was unstable. "I need your help," Rick said. "If you can guide the current flow, I can reroute the power." Thina closed her eyes tighter and raised both hands above the panel. A soft light formed around her fingers. The hum of energy deepened. "Now," she said. "RIK." Connected the last wire. A loud hum filled the room. The engine lights brightened. "We did it," Rick said. "The ship's ready to fly." Back in the control room, Rick sat at the pilot's chair and began rebooting the flight system. Thina stood behind him, calm and focused. Then, the alarm beeped. A new signal appeared closer than before. Another ship just entered orbit. Rick said, "It's Velari design, probably VN." Thina spoke softly but firmly. "Then we fly now." Rick pushed the controls. The ship's systems activated, one by one. Lights glowed. Energy pulsed. The shield shifted from defense mode to flight mode. A soft vibration moved through the ship as the engines lifted it from the surface. For the first time in days, the ship rose into the sky. Thina held onto a rail, steady despite the shaking. Her head tilted up. "I can feel the stars again." Rick smiled, keeping the ship on course. "We're not out yet. Vian might still follow." "Let him try," she replied. "This time I'm not alone." As they moved into low orbit, another ship appeared on the scanner, sleek, dark, and fast. It was gaining speed. "He's coming," Rick said. "Then we'll lead him away." Thina answered. Rick changed course, directing the ship away from the nearest planet and toward the outer system. He moved through asteroid fields, twisting and turning. Van's ship followed closely, but Rick was quick. Suddenly, Thina stepped forward and placed her hand lightly on the console. "There's a path," she said. "Between the asteroid belts. I can feel the energy gaps." "You're sure?" "Yes." Rick trusted her. He flew into the gap she described. The ship passed smoothly between the floating rocks. Behind them, Van's ship followed but clipped. A sharp turn and slowed. They had gained distance. Rick let out a breath. "You just saved us." "No," Thina said softly. "We saved each other." Hours later, the ship entered a quiet region of space. The stars around them twinkled gently. Rick leaned back in the chair, exhausted but proud. Thina stood beside him and did something she had never done before. She reached out and gently placed her hand on his dot in Velari culture. That touch meant deep respect. "You didn't just fix my ship," she said. "You gave me hope again." Rick looked at her, surprised but honored. "And you gave me something I thought I lost. Purpose." Ending hook. As they rested, a light on the console blinked again, not a warning, but a beacon from a far-off world. Thina turned her head and smiled. "There is one place we can go, a hidden planet where my people still wait in silence." Rick looked at her. "Then let's take them the truth." The stars stretched like silver dust across the black sky. Thina's ship floated through quiet space, its engines soft and steady. Inside the control room, Rick sat at the pilot's seat, eyes focused on the screen in front of him. Next to him stood Thina, calm and silent, her eyes still closed, but her senses awake. She could feel the energy around them, the steady hum of the ship, the peaceful pull of nearby stars, and something else. A presence slowly growing behind them. "He's still following," Rick said, tapping the controls. "Van's ship is faster than I thought." Thina nodded slightly. "He will not stop, not until he captures us. Then we don't stop either." The ship moved forward, weaving through space. Ahead, a small blue light blinked, a hidden signal from a planet. Not marked on standard maps. It was covered in mist, with soft oceans and floating islands. Thina called it Velenith, a hidden world where a few of her people had gone to escape the war. "It's quiet there," she said, "and safe. We can warn them. As the ship approached Veleneth, the stars behind them shifted. A long shadow passed across their path. Rick turned quickly to the scanner. He's here. From the black sky, General Vian's ship appeared. Sleek, sharp, and shaped like a blade, it moved fast toward them. Inside, Vian sat in his command chair, eyes cold. His voice low. "Lock onto the princess's vessel," he ordered. "Prepare tractor beam." His soldiers moved without question. They were trained to follow orders, not ask questions. "She is important," Vian said. "Not because of who she is, but because of what she can bring. Unity or obedience." Back in Thena's ship, Rick pushed the controls hard. "He's aiming a beam at us. We can't outrun it," Thena said. "But maybe we can hide." Rick glanced at her. "Hide? Where?" She pointed ahead. "Into the clouds. Veleneth is covered in energy mist. If we get low enough, we disappear from scanners." Rick took a deep breath. "All right, let's try it." The ship dove downward toward Veleneth's surface. Thick clouds swirled below, glowing slightly with strange energy. Rick held the controls tight as the ship dropped into the mist. The moment they entered, everything outside turned white and blue. Visibility dropped and signals went silent. Vian's ship hovered above the clouds, scanners blinking red. "We've lost them," one officer said. Van stood slowly. "Then we wait. They will come back up. They always do." But inside the mist, Rick's ship kept moving carefully. Below the cloud layer, floating islands appeared, green lands held in place by glowing roots of crystal. "It's beautiful," Rick whispered. Thena smiled faintly. "It's the only place I ever felt free." They flew slowly over the floating lands until they saw soft lights buildings hidden among the trees. "A small Velari camp. We found them," Rick said. They landed in a quiet field. The grass shimmered slightly under their feet. As they stepped outside, a group of Velari stepped forward, tall, graceful figures dressed in soft robes. Their eyes widened when they saw the Nay. One of them, an older woman with white hair, stepped closer. "Princess Thena," she said gently. "You're alive." "I am," Thena replied. "And I bring warning." They led her and Rick into a central hall made of crystal and light. Torches glowed with soft energy. Rick looked around in quiet awe. Everything here was peaceful. No weapons, no walls, no guards. Thena spoke to the Council of Elders. She told them of Vian's betrayal, of the hidden message Rick had found, and of the danger now floating above their skies. Some elders looked afraid. Others nodded in silent understanding. "We knew this day would come," one elder said. "But not so soon." "We must protect the princess," another added. "She is the last of the true line." Rick stepped forward. "We can't just hide here. He'll search until he finds this place." "He won't find it easily," Thena replied. "But if he does, we need to be ready." That night, Rick stood near the edge of the island, looking up at the sky. Stars were hidden behind the glowing mist. He could still feel the weight of Vian's ship above them. Thena joined him, silent for a while. "You're thinking of leaving," she said quietly. "I'm thinking of what's next," Rick replied. "If I leave, he might follow me. Give you time." Thena placed her hand gently on the wooden rail. "You've already done more than anyone expected. You gave me my freedom." Rick looked at her. "You gave me something too. You trusted me." She smiled gently. "That trust wasn't given. It was earned." For a moment, they stood in silence. Then Rick spoke again. "I'll stay. At least until the next step is clear." "I'm glad," she said. Then, slowly, she lifted her hand and placed it over Rick's, firm, calm, and full of meaning. For the Velari, it was not just a gesture. It was a sign of full connection, of shared spirit. Rick said nothing, but he understood deeply. Ending hook. Suddenly, Toril floated toward them, beeping an alarm. The ship's scanner had picked up movement. Not just one signal, but many. Vien was not alone. Thena's face turned serious. He's bringing an army. The glowing mist over Velanath's sky began to ripple. From above the clouds, lights flickered. Heavy shadows moved like slow waves in space. General Van's ships had arrived, and not just one. Rick stood near the edge of the floating island, watching the scanner on a small device. The screen showed 5 Velari warships entering the upper atmosphere. Their engines hummed with power. Vien wasn't coming alone. He was bringing a full strike force. He means to surround us, Rick said. Inside the hall, the elders gathered quickly. Thena stood at the center, her hands clasped tightly, face calm but serious. Toril floated beside her, scanning for signals. He is making a show of strength, one elder said. No, Thena replied. He's preparing for capture. He wants to take me quietly. Or with force. We have no weapons, another whispered. We were not made for war. We don't need to fight him, Rick said. We need to outsmart him. The elders looked at Rick with uncertainty. He has more ships, yes, Rick continued. But he doesn't know where we are exactly. The mist protects us for now. If we move quickly, we can escape without facing him. Escape to where? An elder asked. Rick looked at Thena. Anywhere that's far enough. A neutral spaceport. A trade zone. Someplace where Vien can't act openly. Thena nodded. We must go. If I stay, he will destroy this place just to reach me. But how? One elder asked. Our ships are old. Only your small craft is flight ready. Rick stepped forward. Then we take that one. Back at the ship, Rick and Thena stood inside the control room, preparing for launch. The systems were holding strong now, the energy levels steady. But there was one problem. He'll notice the power spike the moment we try to leave, Rick said. He'll lock onto us. I can mask the signal, Thena replied. For a few minutes. Just enough to get past the cloud line. Toril hovered in front of them, beeping a soft message. He wants to stay behind, Thena translated quietly. Rick frowned. Stay behind? Why? Toril flashed lights again. He can overload his core, Thena said. Create an energy burst. It will confuse their scanners. They will think our ship exploded. Rick turned to Toril. You're saying you want to act as a decoy? Toril blinked once. Yes. Thena stepped back. Her lips trembled slightly. She placed her hand gently on the small bot. You've served my family for years, she whispered. You don't need to end this way. Toril's light turned a calm green. It was his choice. Rick lowered his head. He's giving us a chance. In the next hour, Rick worked fast. He rerouted the ship's exhaust to leave a false trail. Thena used her energy sense to adjust the signal output. Together, they made the small craft appear damaged and drifting. Toril moved to the heart of the landing platform and attached itself to the ground. Its systems began to warm. Everything was ready. Inside the ship, Rick strapped into the pilot's seat. Thena sat beside him, her hands resting calmly on the armrests. Though she couldn't see, she knew every corner of the ship by feeling in energy. This will be fast, Rick said. Once we're out of the clouds, I'll head straight for the asteroid ring. If we're lucky, we lose them there. I trust you, Thena said simply. Rick glanced at her. She wasn't just calm, she was brave. Toril's lights began to blink faster. It's time, Thena said softly. Rick nodded. Launching in 3, 2, 1. The ship lifted off, silent at first, then gaining speed. It rose straight into the mist, engines glowing faintly. A few seconds later, behind them, a massive energy burst lit up the clouds. From Van's ship, the scanners picked up a sudden explosion. His officers jumped in surprise. Sir! The princess's ship, Vien, stood. Destroyed? Yes, we've confirmed a high-energy core collapse. Vienne frowned. His eyes narrowed. Something isn't right. Meanwhile, Rick's ship slipped between the clouds and stars, flying fast and low. He kept to the edges of the scanner zones. Behind him, no ships followed. It worked, Rick said, almost shocked. Toril really did it. Thina didn't speak for a moment. She simply placed her hand over her heart. His light still travels. With us, she said gently. They moved toward the asteroid field, a dense area of floating rocks and ice. Rick flew between them with smooth skill. Thina helped, sensing the pull of space and warning him when to turn. After what felt like an hour, they passed through safely. Rick slowed the ship. We're clear. No sign of Vienne. Thina let out a slow breath. You did it. No, Rick said. We did it. As the ship drifted in safe space, Rick turned to her. So what now? Thina tilted her head slightly. We find a place to speak. To show the truth. To let the other Velari hear what Vienne has done. Will they believe us? Some will, others may fear him. But if I stay silent, then everything I ran from would have no meaning. Rick gave a small smile. You've got more courage than most generals. Thina returned a faint smile. And you have more heart than most soldiers. They sat quietly for a few minutes. Then, slowly, Thina reached out and placed her hand gently over Rick's. I could not have done this without you, she said. He looked at her hand, soft and warm. And I didn't think I had anything left to give. Until I met you. The ship glided gently toward a wide space station floating beside a quiet star. Its lights blinked like soft fireflies in the dark, and hundreds of vessels from different species hovered near its docking rings. It wasn't part of any kingdom or military, it was neutral ground. A place where truth could still be heard. Rick adjusted the controls while Thina sat beside him, silent but focused. Her hands rested lightly on the arms of her chair, and her head tilted toward the humming of approaching energy signals. We're almost there, Rick said. No trouble so far. Thina nodded. This station, it accepts all voices? As long as you're peaceful, Rick replied. And you tell your truth clearly. Thina turned her head slightly toward him. Then it's time I speak. They docked at Station Calais, a tall tower-shaped platform made of silver and dark blue metals. Inside, the halls were open and filled with voices from every corner of the galaxy, traders, scientists, travelers, and lost wanderers. Thina walked slowly through the station beside Rick. She held her staff gently, her eyes closed but her step steady. People stared, curious and surprised. A Velari princess, alive and walking, was not something anyone expected to see. A woman in dark robes approached. Her name was Mira, one of the station's peacekeepers. You are Princess Thina, she said. Softly, many believed you gone. I escaped, Thina replied. But now I must speak, Mira nodded. There is a public chamber. If you wish, your voice will be heard by all. That evening, Rick stood at the edge of a large hall. Lights shone down like stars, and the seats were filled with beings of many shapes and colors. Calm music played in the background. A screen behind the stage showed stars and symbols of peace. Then Thina stepped forward. She wore a simple robe. Not royal, not fancy, just clean and bright. Her long staff tapped gently against the smooth floor. Though she could not see the crowd, she could feel every mind watching, every breath held. She stopped at the center and raised her hand slightly. The room grew quiet. My name is Thina, she said clearly, daughter of the Velari line. I do not speak for power. I speak for peace. Her voice was steady, calm like a river. My world fell to war. Not only from outside, but from within. General Vienne, once trusted, now seeks to control through fear. He chased me across the stars. He destroyed ships. He silenced voices. The room stayed silent. I fled not to hide but to learn. I was saved by someone who had no reason to help. A human soldier. Not a royal, not a commander, just a man with a good heart. Thena turned slightly toward Rick. He fixed what others would have thrown away. Not just my ship, but my hope. He taught me that value is not in bloodlines or rank, but in actions. A small wave of soft claps began. I now ask the galaxy to remember who we are. Not soldiers, not tools. We are beings of light, of choice. I will not let fear lead my people again. The claps grew louder. I asked for open ears and open hands, so that we may build again, together. When she finished, the entire hall stood in silent respect. Not because of her title, but because of her truth. After the speech, Rick stood with her on the observation deck. The stars outside twinkled like tiny candles. You were amazing, Rick said. Thena smiled softly. I only told the truth. And they listened, for now. But that is how change begins. Rick looked out into space. Do you think VN will back down now? No, she said quietly. He is proud. He will come. But next time, we won't run. We will stand. Rick nodded. Then I stand with you. She turned her head toward him. Slowly she stepped closer. You saved my life, Rick, she said. But more than that, you saw me when others only saw weakness. He smiled gently. And you gave me something to believe in again. Then, for the first time, Thena reached up and touched his face softly, gently. Her hand moved as if painting a picture, feeling the lines of someone who had stood by her from the start. Velari called it the bond of light, a sacred contact only shared between souls who fully trusted each other. Rick didn't speak. He didn't need to dot the next day. News of Thena's message spread across many channels. Some Velari leaders began to question Van's path. Others stayed silent. But the wave had started. Van, far away in his warship, watched the broadcast. In silence. She dares speak to the galaxy, he said coldly. An officer stepped forward. Orders, sir. Van stared into the screen for a long moment. Then he spoke. Prepare the fleet. We end this soon. But Rick and Thena were already ahead. Inside their ship, they planned a new journey, this time, not to escape, but to build alliances to find the scattered Velari still loyal to peace, and to prepare for the moment Vian came for them. They would not be alone. Not anymore. Final. Seeing the ship soared gently into open space again. Beside Rick, Thena stood, her staff now resting in a quiet corner. She didn't need it here. I used to think blindness meant I couldn't lead, she said softly. But now, I see more than I ever did before. Rick looked at her with quiet pride. You don't just see, Thena. You lead with light. She smiled, and once more, she placed her hand gently on his arm. Strong, full of peace. And together, they flew toward the stars.